Another week to get things
And
going. And today we're going to talk about stories, how a story bank is the ultimate prospect client engagement tool.
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
And here we go, DJ. So
yeah.
we've got some pretty awesome shit coming up in the next little bit. Let me tell you. And I mean, so I don't have to tell you, but I'm not quite going to tell everybody else. I'm just going to create that open loop for a second. But backstage, I think there's something that's very clear in any good, sales. It's present in every movie, every TV show we like, every book we read, is story, right? And I think that as salespeople, I mean, it took me years to even realize the power of stories, right? But we go through so much in a day, right? And we're gonna have Nicole Glenn on in the next couple of days here, and Nicole is big on content, right? And I think stories are also content. Content are stories, and it's this perpetual loop that we go through, right? But I love what you said backstage was, as salespeople, we've got to be good storytellers. And I do believe that. It took me years. Like, I always thought sales was here's the question, answer it. But when we answer it in the form of a story that shares um, a, a, a learning lesson or stuff like that, right? Like, you have kids,
Yep.
you know, as my kids are growing up, I found it easier to tell stories to relay like a lesson as opposed to saying, "Oh, here's Dad preaching again, another lesson," like
Right.
another, right? But you share
That,
a story, and a
that's the
lot of the
greatest
times
thing
it's
about
profound.
the fables. Fables are teaching lessons, but that's a story as well. And yeah, that's how we learn through stories. But yeah, it's
Well, I think
storytelling.
so. I believe so. I believe we learn through stories, and I think when we tell a good story, I think it gives prospects, customers, colleagues, friends, family members a greater insight into our mindset, right? Because one thing you and I have preached since day one is that we can't just be salespeople. Like, as much as a lot of people, and I'm very big on this, and maybe too, like, dead set on it, but there's my business life and my personal life. And the challenge for me as I dig into this, like, online world, and as I dig in deeper, is
Yeah.
watching things like where people are at the gym and they're posting pictures of them at the gym, and I'm like, okay, dude, like, what does that have to do with anything? But it's making them human, right? They're bringing people into their story
Yeah,
again,
exactly.
right?
That
Right.
and
So
that's what I think the power is with it. When we're telling the stories, we want to, as humans, I think, and I guess, so going on storytelling, pull up quotes, obviously. And so this is Margaret Atwood, and just talking about humans, I guess I have to go there. But you're never going to kill storytelling because it's built in the human plane. We come with it. I think that's so true. I mean, we want to hear stories so we can kind of bring some reality to whatever somebody's telling us, because we want to believe, but it has to be believable enough for us to even believe it. And that's where I think the stories, especially, you see movies and it's based on a true story, but they, even movies, they don't tell you the exact story. And I've heard this a few times by different people, because they it's not made for TV. There's not the excitement part, so they
well,
have to
there's a
so they,
process, right? It's
so
called the
so they have to
hero's
add
journey.
things. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. They have to
yeah.
add things, but yeah, go ahead.
No, 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 no. It's just saying. So there's an actual formula called the hero's two journeys in movies, and
Mhm.
it goes back to the beginning of time where they actually,
Yeah,
it's funny you say true story. So have you seen the Hot Zone Anthrax yet on National Geographic? So it's
not,
a mini series on National Geographic that is just 6 episodes, and it's
Mm.
based on true events just after 9/11. There was an anthrax scare and this and that, and a
Yeah.
couple of
Yeah.
people died and stuff, right? So
Mm.
it's funny because my wife and I just finished it yesterday, and at dinner yesterday, we're sitting there saying, you know, it'd be a really cool thing for all of these like true based on a true story is afterwards if they did like an hour episode. So even
Yeah.
a 2 hour movie, if after the 2 hour movie they did another hour about what was real and what wasn't, right? And if you know, the first time
See,
this
and
actually
and that's
go for it.
exactly what I was talking about, because we're always wondering what is real and what is part of the story. And so we're
And
always wondering that. What?
mhm. So did you ever see Lone Survivor?
Yeah. Is that the
Marcus
Afghanistan guy?
Luttrell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mark.
Marcus
Yeah.
Luttrell. Okay. So after Lone Survivor, I went on this mission to find out what was real and what wasn't. Because I knew it was Hollywood and like that infamous gun scene that is just friggin' insane. I'm thinking like, what is real here? And for everybody listening, we will get into logistics here in just a second, okay? But just to understand the power of it, the power of a story and what people do after they hear the story. Okay. So for weeks, I started looking for Marcus Luttrell, Marcus Luttrell, Marcus Luttrell to
So
figure it out.
funny.
American Sniper, same thing. Like, what is real? What is fiction in this story? You know, read the American Sniper book. You know, then you got Extreme Ownership and all these other books. So, and found out that certain areas in the movie are actually untrue based on the thing. Like, there was one part Marcus Luttrell is very candid on where he says, you know, when I'm standing on the hill and you know I have my one of my guys on my shoulder and I forget his name, he goes, but I turn around in the movie, he gets kind of shot in the shoulder and it throws me forward and he loses him, and that's when his buddy's up at the top of the hill and
Yeah.
the three of
Yeah.
them are
Yeah.
at the bottom of the
Yeah.
hill. And he said in actuality he got like the side of his head blown off. Like
Oh,
he was
gee.
so he wasn't alive and he never held
Mm.
the piece of paper in his hand, but from a
Yeah.
dramatic perspective they did that.
Yeah.
So you know, um and so I you know, for us, for me anyways, for my wife and I, it's like always this like what is really true and what isn't, right? Because there's now when it
Well,
comes to our stories though, like for how we, if we could bring this back to logistics and
yeah.
to sales, you know, our stories for what we tell. You know, I started years ago creating a story bank. And as things happen and as I learn lessons, I just kind of write down the individual things that had happened in the lesson. And you know, one story, if I can share a quick story, because it's all about stories. Um, one story is like
Sure.
when I'm speaking, yeah, yeah. So when I'm speaking with a prospect or customer, and the topic of you know becoming content, I guess, comes up. I share a story about when I was big into pharmaceuticals. For most of my career, I was big into pharmaceutical loads and had this one customer. We'd been working with each other for close to over a decade at this point. And I became really content with freight coming out of San Leandro, California, going to Brooks, Kentucky. And we were doing it every couple of weeks, 2, 3 weeks. We were running team drivers, you know, big payday on them. I was, you know, making really good margins. I'd always use the same supplier, and it, you know, came real easy. And there was this like calm whenever I would book. But never once was I continually following up with the drivers after about 5, 6 weeks. So we're about 4 months into this deal, and we load again. So they come in, they open up the doors in San Leandro, California. They load the freight on, they close the doors, and they head out. So here's the thing: when it comes to becoming lax or becoming complacent, I guess maybe not lax is the word, but complacent. So when they arrive in Brooks, Kentucky, they open up the doors and it smells like a dead body. The pungent odor, the guy on the dock sits there and he goes, like, and he goes, I literally almost threw up on the dock. That's how
Oh my
bad it
goodness.
was. And so everybody kind of puts a stop on it. Now, if you know about the pharmaceutical industry, it's all about cleanliness, right? Like you got to think of this. So
Yes.
now I didn't know, like I understood pharmaceuticals was about cleanliness, but at what point, like to what degree is it about cleanliness, right? So here's the thing: they immediately put a stop. They literally lock the dock down, right? close the door, have the driver go to the back of the yard. They literally contain him with rope, okay? And everything stops. And I'm sitting there going, I get a call from my customer screaming at me. They delivered about 2:30 in the morning, so it's about 3:30 in the morning, and the customer is screaming like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! What's going on here? I have no, like, you obviously get woken up in this panic, right?"
Yep.
And he says, da da da, this and this happened. So I get the supplier on the phone, and I said, like, "What's going on?" He goes, "I don't know. We do the same thing we normally do." I go, "No, you don't. Like, it smells like a dead body." So in the end, come a day into figuring this all out, we realized that they'd been delivering pigs parts, like piece in Gaylord's big bags, right? So they deliver that, and then they go to our location. So what was happening is, for the last couple of weeks, because it was the same drivers over and over again, they got used to it. I got used to having the same drivers. I stopped asking the questions. Like, there's areas of, like, faults here that crack the foundation of this, right? And
Absolutely.
long and so, as we realize, we can assume is that one of the forklifts or something must have just clipped a bag, because it was not on the actual floor, which means that the forklift driving in and out, when they were delivering, wiped it off from the ribs of the reefer, but in the grooves there was blood. Now, because it was like 9 to 12 minutes away from delivery to pickup, they open up the doors. It's cool. It's like, it was what, 39 degrees, so it's very chilled in there. Obviously didn't have time to ferment or anything. So what happened is they opened it up, same carrier, same driver, same shipper. So again, he's complacent. He's like, "Yeah, you guys are always good. Just bring it on in." They don't do a search. The driver doesn't get in the back to do a search. So, like, areas of fault. I didn't ask, "Hey, can you do a search?" And there's blood in there. So with this contamination, they actually had to shut the entire San Leandro plant down,
Oh my
backtrace,
gosh.
yeah, backtrace this forklift to figure out where it's been.
Oh,
Everywhere that forklift had been, they had to shut down and sanitize, and like completely sanitize. And in the end, it was a $265,000 cleanup for
maybe.
literally probably an ounce or two of pig's blood in the rib of the thing. So I share that story a lot of the time, because A, I kept the customer in the long run, but B, it taught me never to be complacent when moving freight. So anytime a shipper says, "You know what, our stuff is pretty intense," Dan, I go, "Here, listen, here's the deal." And I tell that story. And then I have tons of them, and I can tell that story in 30 minutes, or I can tell it in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It just depends on, like, where we're at in the conversation, or what the need is. I can tell it on stage and share 30 minutes of, think of this, and if I would have thought it this way, what do you think? And you know what I mean? Just really
That's
analyzing. And I
that's
find that,
sales though. That's sales. That's a great storyteller. That's sales. Here's another good one, and kind of tying to logistics. Michael Margolis. Storytelling is about connecting to other people and helping people to see what you see. That's
mm,
that's that's
that's a
that's
good one.
that's where we're
Yeah.
trying to get that connection and not missing. So we got to tell stories so we can try to help them, uh, because from the stories, you just shared that story, and I guarantee you, nobody's shot any messages yet or anything, but I guarantee you, it triggered something to anybody listening. Your story triggered things to me, just you telling that story, and
Mhm.
that's why we're telling those stories, is to try to help them trigger maybe the pain points, maybe what's wrong, maybe what their actual difficulty is, because most of the
Mhm.
time we think the thing right in front of our face is the problem, but it's actually, uh, we got to do some digging to really find out what the problem is. And so, yeah, storytelling.
100%. And if you revert that back to goal setting, the
Yeah,
goal is usually not the greatest achievement. It's
yeah.
everything you learned
It's
along
the
the
path.
way to the
It's
goal,
the
which is the
path. Yeah,
greatest achievement,
yeah, yeah.
right?
That
And
so.
and and not to mention that story, like, and just stories in general, I find, give our prospects, or the people we're trying to share, you know, um, like, what our value is, or what our worth is, or what our personality, or our perception, our mental part of the game, because really our game is mental, right? Like when we look at sales, it's mental. You walk in every sales call, yeah, hi, how are you? But sometimes we just feel like that. There's
Yeah,
days
yeah.
before we go live,
We're
I'm like,
human.
you and I are
We're
like, oh my
human.
God.
I felt like that this morning. I was like, oh man, I had a killer weekend this weekend. We had flea markets all over the place. So I'm having to do some. Most of my help is got the vid, got the big C or whatever. So can't have anybody around to help. And so yeah, it was a
So
nightmare.
most of
So,
your help has the vid?
oh yeah, I got the vid.
Shit. It's still now, is that the Omicron one or just the regular one?
I don't even know.
Because there's so many flavors at this point,
Yeah,
right? Like
it could be any of the 36 flavors at this point.
it,
I think
I
it's
don't mean to laugh about that, but
no, no.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean. It just seems
yeah.
like there's just every week there's something new coming up. And listen, hey,
No,
but
it's a serious thing, but at the same point, I mean, it's there's different versions of the cold and the flu and
yeah,
everything else.
but so here's the thing, right? Think of that for a second, right? Think of that.
The
The
stories,
stories we hear
yeah,
of that,
yeah,
right? So I,
oh,
I
yeah,
can recall
oh, yeah.
um, there was a story in was it Wall Street Journal or New York Times? One of the two, about politicians that were saying, no, 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 don't believe, don't believe, don't believe. Then they got it, and on their deathbed, they told a story to everybody about getting the vaccination, right? So, I mean, stories are everywhere. If you really look at your day as a whole, like a whole day, it would be interesting if you had somebody follow you around and
No,
to share how many stories you tell over like almost every when you really dive deep. I mean, every conversation is almost a story. You think about when you and I just have a
absolutely.
conversation, how many
But even more,
stories are involved?
but even more, I think the bigger thing, and I think where a lot of salespeople miss the boat, and to everybody's defense, oh, you're making me jealous. um, to to everybody's defense, though, it's not your fault, so don't blame yourself for this. But I think stories, though, where we miss it is when we don't tell personal stories. I think you can get a lot deeper connection, a lot better connection when you're telling a story about yourself, and I think a lot of people stray away from those in a lot of different situations. But those are the best way to really, one, make yourself human, especially in a sales situation, in any kind of negotiating. You're just trying to make where you're finding the common ground. So wouldn't you agree that the best stories are personal stories to tell, not
Okay, so I
not
do agree.
third party?
However, I have to play on this a bit.
I like,
Okay,
yeah, play on it.
so
That's fair.
and the reason being is, I look at it and I say, okay, a lot of the things we talk about, a lot of the things we do, um, you have green, brand new, and you have experienced. And then you have like super, and there's this level of engagement or level of experience that comes with just being in the industry, right?
Yeah,
So, personal stories, I think one, if you're brand new in the industry, people aren't going to relate to that. The people that are green, right? Because they're just like, well,
yeah.
DJ, I don't have anything.
Oh, that's
However,
yes, but you
what
have to
I've
go.
always said, exactly, but hold on. What I've always said is, okay, so if you have like and for lack of a better term, a script. And what I mean by a script, everyone, is not the hi, this is Dan, I'm calling from duct cleaning service, and like none of that crap. What I'm talking about is here's your main question that you always ask to identify your customer profile, the first like 5 seconds in the call. But with that, if you ask the same question consistently, then what's going to happen is you're going to get the answers. What I would do is if I was starting brand new right now, I would ask the same question 15 times, I get the answers. If I didn't have stories, I'd go to people and say, hey,
Yeah,
what's a good story that you have on price where you spoke to the customer and they thought price was the answer, but really it was cost over price. And I'd grab a story like that. And then what do you have a story about capacity and how a customer's been screwed over? And I'd grab that story. And then what I would do is I would take that story and I would turn it into, hey, I have a colleague that told me this story, but do you know what that got me thinking of, Mr. Prospect? Do you know what I mean? And that to me
yeah,
would say, okay, here's the story. Like this is the essence of what we're talking about, but here's my perspective on it and how it got me thinking. And I
yeah,
think as much as a personal story, because when it does happen to us, it it alters us in some way. I think every story we go through alters us in a way, and even if it's just alters the lens in which we see certain things,
Yeah.
right? Big
Yeah.
big change. I mean, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Wayne Dyer and Tony Robbins said that,
Yep.
great. But we look at that and we say, okay, we can use stories. They don't have to be our stories. We can say we instead of I, right?
Yeah.
So I just, that for me, that was kind of the part,
And you're right. And you're
especially
right.
when I.
Yeah. If you don't have
Mhm.
experience in it, it's just like everybody trying to get in this industry, and only the big.
Brian says it right. He says, I connect more on a personal level when I share my stories that reflect my mistakes and vulnerabilities. Absolutely. And what I
Yeah.
did to overcome them, I inspire and motivate. And that's very well said, Brian. Like,
Yeah.
very well said.
I mean, he hit it right on the head too, and that's kind of what I was trying to say. In the opportune time, better to tell your stories if you have one. And then if you don't, obviously new to the industry, you don't have stories based on this. Well, then tell stories from your previous life or previous career or venture or whatever.
Hmm.
But if you don't have those, yeah, absolutely. Look to people in your industry and your team and find those stories. But again, he said it so right that the stories are going to. I mean, it's the same thing. So there's all different types of people. So just like ways of learning. Some people learn
Did
better
you just lose
writing.
your train of thought?
No, no, no,
Because you
not at
kind of went
all.
like this. You went, okay, yeah.
Well, because I wanted to go. So then it took me another level deeper just thinking about it. But people like to learn a different way. Um, and there's all we're human, so we're all have the freedom of choice. But I think we have habits. I think that's why we all can either feel gratitude or envy. Those are going to line in the same line. Nobody has a different form of gratitude, than you see what I'm saying. So we all in the end kind of tie together with that. And so learning is the same. Some people learn better writing it down. Some people learn when you just listening to somebody. Some people learn better just doing it. Oh,
Hmm.
I don't want to see a book. I don't have me write it down. Just let me do it. I think the same thing is for stories though, and for people, and stories kind of make you more believable. People want to believe you, but I think some people have a harder time believing. And you know what I'm saying by
Yeah.
that? Like,
Yeah.
like, so me personally, and I think I've heard this from somebody else. A lot of great salespeople are the most gullible, are the most, um, they'll believe anything else. And it's because they want to believe so much. But the people
Is
that would
that salespeople or just people of more of a positive mindset?
maybe a positive mindset. It might be that, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's uh, either way. It's they just want to believe. You want to believe. I'm one of those. I want to believe everybody. So I'm the I'll believe everybody in the beginning. Perfect stranger, I'm going to believe you. Um, Once you lie to me though, then I'm never gonna believe you again. So I will always give the benefit. Then there's the other side, and I think there's a lot of humans out there, and I think that's why the stories kind of make that connection. There's a lot of people that they're gonna doubt everything. They're always looking, and so our
Hmm.
clients,
Hmm.
as humans, we have to think of that. Our clients, these are people that we're talking to. They're always going to find something. Well, hold on, that story, but you said it's somebody else. So what if they da 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 da? And so that's where I think telling your own story, and when you can really put power behind it, that's how you can fight through some of those people. And in the end, there's some that are always going to have and be able to find that uh, question of doubt. Mel Robbins gives. So just I was telling you, listening to a new thing from Mel Robbins on with Tom Bilyeu talking about her new book of high fiving yourself in the mirror. She tells a story of being in a cab in the getting basically driven by an Uber driver, and this Uber driver she gets he says, "I know who you are. Yeah, I think you can help me. I think you can help me." She's like, "Great, tell me what you want. Tell me what's your goal." "Well, I want to be an actor and I want to be a famous actor and win an Oscar." "What are you doing in a driving me around in an Uber?" And then she starts dissecting it apart. And if you guys want to hear the rest, look it up. But she starts dissecting it apart. In the end, she's trying to help him from talking himself out of not doing it. So he's defeating himself because we have that block sometimes. And that's where, I mean, psychology and sales and storytelling, I think, all tie together. But yeah, I
Oh,
love it.
well,
I,
100%. I mean, listen, if we
I
don't
love being able to
understand
tell stories.
psychology, we'll never like DJ, if we don't understand psychology, if we don't understand the way the brain works, we would never be able to create those, hit the hot buttons
Paint
or
the pictures.
identify things that customers or prospects really want. Um, 100%. And I think you're right for the most part. Most people talk themselves out, but I think there's another level
Yeah.
to it, and just based on the years I've done personal development and the years I've really dug into goal attainment is a lot of the times more. I think number one reason is we don't have belief in ourselves to achieve the goals, but
Yeah.
number two reason is we think it's going to come so much quicker and easier. Like we
Yeah. Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
really understand the depths to which we have to go to fulfill our dreams, right? Like as a salesperson, when I first started, zero sales training experience, zero coaches, zero anything, I started to do well. I never thought I need to go to another level, but you plateau. And
Yeah.
once you plateau, it's like an Olympic athlete. You get to a level and you plateau. So what do you need to do? You need to change your diet. You need to change the way you do this. Maybe you need to change your sleeping pattern. Maybe you need to change your workouts. Like all of it adds up, right? Like when I was doing bodybuilding years ago, I remember it was like a 9 week turnaround on all of the programs.
Oh yeah.
So literally after 2.5 months, 2.25, 2.5 months, you'd have to completely change your program because your body
Yeah.
starts to remember what days are what and what exercises are what. So you have
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
shock
Yeah.
the body. And I think in life, we have to shock our life. Like I can't tell you how many
I love
salespeople
it.
I
Oh
speak to, and
man,
they're
that's
like,
good.
"Oh, I'm doing great." Well, what do you want? Well, I want this. Okay, and we look at it, and it, think of it like this: they want it, but the investment, and I'm not even talking just financial. I'm talking time, energy, effort, all this. They're not willing to put it in. But I mean, and again, for everyone, this is a totally different show. Like that has nothing to do with story, but
Yeah.
that is a
Yeah.
story
Yeah.
that for years I wanted X, and it was like okay, and I thought if I just came in and just made more calls, X would happen. But and yeah, actually it does relate to story because I'll give you a story about it. For almost 3 years, I started making 12-hour days calling. And at the end of 3 years, I realized I'm no closer to my goal. Why? Because I put zero effort on client retention. I only focused on getting clients in the door. I didn't focus on maintaining the relationship, building the relationship, enhancing, strengthening the relationship, and all that. So after 3 years, I was like making all these phone calls, and
Yeah.
you stop. And that's the day I stopped. And I said, where would I be if I kept all my clients? And that's the day my lens changed because I was
I,
like,
I
damn,
I got a
that's
good
right.
way to tie something to that. So your what you just went through that story, uh, a good way to kind of parable or whatever tied to something else. It's kind of like gold mining, but not. You're going through. You're sending the dirt through, but there's nothing to catch the gold. So the dirt just keeps going through, and so does the gold. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so that's why you filter it, right?
Yeah.
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 So Austin says, good morning. Good morning, Austin.
Morning,
And
Austin.
Ryan, thanks again for that comment, my friend. That was awesome. I love that.
Oh
I love
man.
that. And then Ryan says, muscle memory. Every quarter, I book a weekend with my wife to go to a spa. No phones, no communication, just to think and reflect on personal, professional, mental, and spiritual on the last 3 months. Dan, you're so right. Yeah, 100%,
So,
Ryan. It's
yeah. Yeah.
listen, I think we all do it, personally, as we sit here right now, December 6th, 10:30 a.m. Hell, I could tell you days that I've spent working, trying to build something, do something, be something, grow, like spread the message and all this.
Yeah.
Um, I've missed out on a lot of stuff in my life because of it, right? A lot of stuff, like hands down. And I try. And then I just realized that it's like something sucks you back in, right? So it's this consistent evolution, I think, with us as humans.
Absolutely.
The reality is, DJ, if we, if we, so here's a challenge for everyone out there today. If you take an hour today and sit back and start thinking of different situations in your life, in your business career, even in your personal life, that have changed the perspective in which you see things.
Mhm.
Because I think that's all stories do, is they change
Absolutely.
perspective. Like if you look at stories in great movies, the twist, the plot, a lot of the time. So when you go back to the hero's true journeys, right? There's two things that happen. And the big two things that happen, and for everybody that's looking to create stories, this is very, very important. Like even if you go in and then you're introduced to the guide, and then you go through the challenges and whatever, in the end, there's two things that happen. One is the hero succeeds and accomplishes the mission. But the
Yeah.
even more powerful one is the hero changes inside. And you don't have to look any further. And I know some people might giggle at this, but Lightning McQueen, right? In Cars. So when he's coming in to win, and his buddy spins out and crashes, he stops, lets the other guy win, goes back and pushes his buddy across the finish line. So what happens? He was this close to winning the Piston Cup, like his ultimate dream that he's always wanted, but he grew into somebody bigger.
Yeah.
And I personally think, and love your thoughts on this, and everybody watching and listening as well, you know, if we can share, like Brian said, with the customer, and what did it overcome, how did it inspire and motivate, how did my lens change, how did my thinking change, that's going to benefit the customer prospect long term. This is the reason why it would be really awesome if you worked with me, Mr. Prospect, because I've been through that learning experience that has given me this lens to see things, right? And
Oh,
to me,
that's
when
power right
I'm
there.
100%, right, DJ? And to me, and again, I put myself in the traffic manager's shoes, right? Like we think about the decision, especially in today's day,
Yeah.
right? Fractured supply chains, things taking twice as long, and sometimes cases three times as long. The natural disasters we've been faced with, like if you just look at Ford, for example, right? Like we talked about this in the past, the transistor chips. Okay, like 16 containers on a ship hits a chemical tanker, they both sink. Right, the automotive industry, no more chips, gone. So now companies are producing them, and like you know what I mean, trying to get them.
Yeah.
Then Ford gets them. They get
Yeah.
3,400 F-150s built. They get put on a train. The train derails, totally destroys all of them, right? So like, and then then you've got all these other things. You got all the issues coming from overseas. Then Vancouver gets hit with this huge storm and wipes out train rails and roads and everything. Like there's
Yeah.
all these levels. You look at all the issues that have happened in ports this year, where taking out cranes, taking out other ships, like everything's just like kind of, it's that kind of stacking the challenges on top of each other. So you have all of that, and then you have us calling a shipper saying, you know what, we are right. Like, think about it for a second. Like, just
No, it's
again,
all right. That's
right.
yeah.
So here's the story, right? Is Mr. Prospect, Mrs. Prospect, Miss Prospect. Like I know we've had all this going on, but I could tell, I could share one story with you. And if you have a story that goes with that as to the reason your philosophy, strategy, your overall approach is different, they'll listen. But
Mhm.
think of the hesitation, like the hesitation. Now, some of you might say, "Oh, Dan, my numbers are up 10 folds this year." Yeah, I'm wondering, and again, I'm not trying to say anything ill of anyone, but I talk to a lot of companies every day, and well, we're up 148%. And my question becomes, only because I've been there, 2018 to 19 proved that, where 2018 I thought I was like, just I
Okay.
figured this formula out that was just awesome for sales. In 2019 came, I realized it was a capacity customer. I call them capacity customers. So I'm wondering
Mhm.
how many of us in the industry today have capacity customers that have come in the door, new
Yeah.
customers that have come in the door, that when, not if, when things turn, because I guarantee you we're going to have another 2019. Now, whether it be mid 2022 or 2023, we're going to have it,
Agreed.
because
Agreed.
the costing for, now, again, don't get me wrong here, everyone, because don't start, slamming down on the Dano here. I believe we need to pay suppliers more money, trucking companies, asset-based companies, brokers need to make what they're worth. Asset-based companies need to make what they're worth. So if you're a crappy asset-based company, you don't deserve to make much. But if you're a high quality, like killer, like just insane value, you deserve to make money, because the amount of money we make is in direct proportion to the value we deliver to the marketplace. That is gold. That is ironclad. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If your paycheck
Absolutely.
sucks, it's because you're not doing something to get a better paycheck. You might think you are. Start really critically thinking. So, with that being said, that baseline. However, manufacturers, on the other hand, are up 5 times longer to get things done. Costs are up 5 times for the most part. And I'm not just talking transportation. I mean, in speaking with companies, you think it's transportation, then you realize, no, they got millions of square feet of warehouse space they never had to pay for before. That's
Yeah.
huge. So costs are
Yeah.
skyrocketing. The second something levels, and so in our industry, capacity does this compared to volumes.
Yeah.
Now it's a shipper's market, right? In which, and again, to me, that's just such crap. Like, let's create something that's standard, and he who has the most value wins. Like, he who is the most qualified to run that business, because that is their
Yeah.
niche, should win. We're 12% of the global GDP, for cripe's sake. Like, there's enough in it for everyone, right? Like, just,
Yeah.
now Dan's rants.
Uh-oh.
Anyways,
Uh-oh,
so
did it.
but to
That's good.
complete the thought, DJ, because I've monopolized this long enough. To complete the
No,
thought,
no,
it's
you're good.
it's
You're
you
good.
know that story is going to engage that shipper more than anything, because I I look at it and I say, your livelihood is based on decisions you make. In our industry, our livelihood's based on decisions we make. How many times have everyone listening, including you and I, made a decision to use that supplier because you're like, oh, like they're the only one there, and I don't trust this person. And you go to
Bad
bed at night, and you
decision.
wake up in the morning, and lo and behold, it's gone to shit to hell in a handbasket, or crap shit in a bag,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We've all been there. For me, I think about it a lot, and I think about, like, what would engage a shipper, right? Hence the 8 mile theory. 8 Mile is just a story. You're telling
Mhm.
a story that resonates with what they're thinking,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to
Exactly.
me, I don't know. I look at it and I say, like, with all that, right? So did what I just said about all the issues and things compounding, and the issues with a logistics manager or shipper these days, did that not give you a different perspective when you go into a sales call?
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Like,
That's it.
when you think about it now, you're not thinking about, oh, hey, let's just, get this person's freight. It's like, okay, this person's using somebody.
Yeah.
When they make a decision to switch to me, it's a very visual decision, because if I screw up, everybody knows about it,
Yeah.
right? If I don't screw up, it's going to be longer before anyone knows about it, right? Like, if you just kind of make a transition, and it's almost like what we consider to be a seamless transition, and you're adding a few more details here. You might have one customer service person that says, I like DJ over the next person. Or you might have another one that says, I like the next person over DJ because I used to have this, or I had a relationship with them. It takes a long time for that new supplier, when they're doing something well, unless they've come in and really solidified it, to hit the top, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
it takes 2 seconds when things go wrong. And I
Oh, yeah.
personally believe that, just like 2018, there's a lot of promises in the market for people that
Yeah.
really can't deliver, right? Like, it would be interesting if you had some kind of system that would monitor every single sales call from every single logistics company, and how many people are still saying I have capacity when they really don't, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Just,
yeah.
it'd be interesting, because I know that's a real baseline one. But when I speak to customers, I ask the question all the time. So how many sales reps have called you out of the blue this year saying they have capacity? How many have you tried, and how many have come through? And it's about 10% that come through.
Oh, yeah.
So that 90%, unfortunately, tells a story. And here's the second part of this, everyone.
Yeah.
That 90% tells a story to your next prospect, that you can serve at a much higher level. But they've been told a story that tells them brokers suck, that tells them you're lying. Like, think of the story of the snake oil used car salesman. How long has
Yep.
that story been going on? How many
I,
people have
I don't even
actually,
know. I've told it so many times. When did it even start? Now I want to look it up just so I can see
well,
how long it's
so,
been.
and did you ever see Matilda, the movie
Yeah.
Matilda? Okay,
Yeah.
with Danny
Yeah.
DeVito?
Yep.
Okay, so that movie was built off the stereotypes of the snake oil salesman, where he's
Yeah.
a used car dealer. I remember he
Yeah.
pours like
Ford
wood
Stephen.
shavings or something down the
Yeah.
engine. He's like,
Oh
this will
yeah.
take him for
Oh,
100K
then
before the
listen.
transition.
If you people think that doesn't happen, it does happen. There's still people out there doing
I love it.
Matilda tricks.
So so let me share a story that impacted me. And when I started really thinking about it, I went, this is crazy. So remember I told you about Dr. Death, the story
Yeah.
of Dr. Death with Chris, whatever his name, neurosurgeon, like killed people,
Yeah.
maimed people, paraplegic. He just left a wake of death and terror in his path. Okay. So my wife and I watch it, and we were very intrigued because I'm like, wow, this is crazy. Like, how did he go from Baylor Medical to Dallas Medical, like to all these different hospitals? And nobody knew this guy was literally maiming people his whole and killing people his whole way through. Okay.
Insane.
So that story is in my head. I go in to get this surgery. I and I know it sounds crazy, DJ, but I'm lying on the table and
Wondering
they're
if it's
pulling
Dr.
and
Death.
prodding because I mean my hand's frozen, right? But in my head, I'm going, okay, you make an incision, you go in there, you cut the tunnel, you sew it up, you're done, right? Like to me, I'm not a medical person, but they're pulling and prodding, and it was supposed to be a half-hour surgery. I was in there for about an hour. So after the half-hour mark, I'm still feeling the pulling and prodding. Guess where my head went? The story of Dr. Death. My brain immediately said, am I going to be able to use my hand after? And I know it sounds crazy, but I'm sitting there thinking, holy shit, like, are they
Yeah.
naming me? And like, and I want to look and there's a sheet and I'm like, you're kind of like doing one of these and you're trying to look, but all I could think of. And so I finally stopped and said, is everything okay over there? Cause it seems to be taking a while. And the doctor says to me, he goes, the inflammation you have in your hand is insane. Like we haven't even got to the tunnel yet.
Oh
So
my.
that explanation calmed that story. But because one story about somebody thousands of miles, one person thousands of miles away, changed my entire lens that I was paying attention to my surgery. Now, some people might think that's crazy, but that's the power of
The
story.
story.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
think of that story of the traffic manager, logistics manager, the shipper, the person you're looking at dealing with. What are the stories that has created the lens they see from? You know, you have tons of shippers out there, DJ. We don't use brokers. Why? We prefer to use asset-based carriers. There's tons of articles and statistics out there that brokers can help when you have the right one. They can take away hundreds of thousands of dollars in employee costs in a shipping department. They can manage everything from a 50,000 foot view where your shipping department can't unless you bring in logistics experts. Like, there's so many different
Yeah.
stories. You're the manufacturer. You're the expert at manufacturing. Let me be the expert at what I do, which is getting your product to
Yeah.
market in a fashion which is going to help you increase your image, credibility, and brand. But it's all story. Everything is
All,
story.
all the story. Yeah. No,
All story.
stories are, yeah. Stories are insane. Here's the quote I wanted to end with, but then I think it might trigger us to go a little deeper. So I
I'm good.
figure
Let's go. Do it.
I figure we'll end here. But there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. Maya Angelou.
I love that. I love that because here's the thing. How many of us have untold stories that lead to a question for our prospects? Right? Untold story that leads to a question. Perfect one. Hey, you get me some pricing, you get in good, we'll talk about more business. Okay, Mr. Prospect, I've been down this road. 6 months later, we're still talking price. I
Yeah.
really don't want to go down this road if there's no opportunity for it. How many salespeople actually say that in fear that they're not going to get the business? How many salespeople tell themselves the story, if I try to raise my customer rates, they're going to go somewhere else, so they don't raise rates, right? Like, think about these, again, stories that are
Story.
untold.
We're either
Because
telling somebody else or
stories
we're
create
telling,
your beliefs. Belief is what your entire life functions on. One
bam,
1000%, right? Look
right
no
there.
further than Dr. Death and my hand. If I
Yeah.
had not seen Dr. Death, I wouldn't have had to believe that what the hell's going on.
In
Like
the end, what you have to realize is stories. So either just like sales, I mean, it's kind of the same thing, but either Grant Cardone says that either you're selling them or they're selling you. Seller be sold. Same thing with stories. Either you're believing their story or the story you're telling yourself, or they're believing your story.
mm.
But somebody is believing a story, and that's where that belief. Whoever said that, that was yeah. That's but
But
that
can
is
I?
where we
I'll
get
go
a
even a
lot of our
step further.
beliefs from is
hmm
stories. Until we find
hmm
another story that will change our belief because we believe it. Again, that's yeah, yes. Whoever
Now,
said that, that was amazing.
stories create a perception,
Yeah.
right? Perception creates belief,
Reality. Yeah,
and
perception is reality.
well, individual's perception is their reality, right? It's
Yeah,
you see things completely different than I see things.
yeah.
I
We're going to.
believe a story can change perceptions,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Like I remember
It's like
this.
putting on a different colored glasses. You're wearing yellow
Mhm,
glasses, and now
mhm,
you get your rose colored glasses. Or
mhm. Well,
yeah,
I used to go to Bible study, right? Every Thursday morning at 7 a.m., 7 till 8.
okay.
There was a group of us that met at church, and we'd go through. So we did like Tony Dungy's book, and we
Okay.
would
Yeah,
pick a
yeah,
book.
yeah.
And so we wouldn't necessarily study the Bible. I called it Bible study, but we'd sit down, and it was our pastor and about five of us, five business people. And we go and we talk about the lessons and the stories in the book and the life lessons in the book, right? And in speaking about it, um, something came up about family members. And I brought a story. I said, well, because when I was 30, my brother was 32, he died of cancer. And I said, he's a great idol to me. And the reason that he is, never drank, never smoked. He was always there for people, right? He was always the DD to make sure all of his friends got home. Like he would be out till four
Okay.
o'clock in the morning, dropping people off, getting out of the car, walking into the door, making sure they got in, coming back, three other drunk people, and he'd just do it, right?
So
He
he's
moved,
kind of
he
a
moved out
saint,
to Edmonton. Well,
modern day
in my
saint.
in
Huh?
my eyes,
Yeah, yeah,
100%. In my eyes, he was a saint. He moved out to Edmonton. He was downtown Edmonton, came around the corner, and there's this woman there with her baby, and he bends down, he starts talking to her, realizes she's a crack addict with a baby on the streets of Edmonton. It's like November. And if you ever been to Edmonton in November, y'all, Edmonton, not a nice place in the wintertime, let me tell you that. So he took her to his house. And this was nothing sexual. It was nothing. He wanted to help. So he literally brought her home on a Tuesday. He had work on the Wednesday. Wakes up Wednesday morning. There's an addict in his house with a baby. He says, "Listen, there's food in the fridge." He goes, "I'm going to stop at Walmart. I'm going to get your baby some clothes. I'm going to get you some clothes. Just take care of yourself. Just relax. Just stay in the house." And he leaves for work. Like she could have emptied his. Like there's all sorts of things that your story of
Oh
addicts
yeah.
tells
Oh,
us,
yeah.
right?
Oh, your mind
And it
is
could have
telling a lot of stories. Yeah,
gone every
especially
way,
when you're
you know.
away from that. Yeah, is she? Am I going to
So
come home and everything is gone? Am I?
100%. So then, what the end result is when we're out in Edmonton, and my brother's in the hospital and not doing well. This woman walks in with her toddler, and I said, "Oh, do you know my brother?" She says, "Your brother saved my life," and tells me this story. Okay, before this story, I had a different perspective of my brother because we're siblings. We fight when we were kids. I was like, you know what, and not that I didn't like him. I loved my brother. Don't get me wrong, but I had a different story. This changed my story. So I tell this in the Bible study, and one of the guys in the study says, "Okay, so did he get baptized?" I said, "I'm not sure why." He says, "Well, really good deeds, but he's not going to heaven unless he's baptized." I'm like, "Okay, dude," and like completely blew up, right?
Uh,
Like that you just that story I'm not going to believe over the story that, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
those stories, because he just said it, like bang and outright said it. If he would have told me a story, I might have had a different perspective on it. Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
But
yeah.
that story to me tells me, regardless of what any book says, I know my brother's in heaven because of the people he's helped. right? So
Absolutely.
that story is a story you will never get me to disbelieve unless you tell me an even more powerful story, which there isn't very many stories as powerful as that one. Like when you sitting there and this woman walks in and says, because of a family member having complete faith in humanity, like complete faith in humanity and just a heart that wants to help, like change, save that woman's life and that baby's life. Like in my opinion, now some people might disagree, but I'm sitting there thinking, no, man, like that to me is the highest level of humanity, right? Like
Absolutely.
just that
Saving
ultimate
a
faith. Like
complete
you said, I
stranger.
don't.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I trust everybody until they give me a reason not to. How many people would actually trust an addict in their house they met 12 hours earlier? Like,
Not many.
like even to
Not
me,
many.
I sit back and I go, he never did that. No way. She's like, yeah, he did. Like, and my wife and I were all just like, you gotta be fair. Like, just blew my mind. Now think of the lens that changes, right? That is the most powerful lens on the planet. And when I got back, every night I was like, Ted, that was my brother's name. You know, I dedicate the rest of me helping people to you. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I do believe we have that inside of us, right? Like there's something inside of us, Ryan, for example, he got into the Humane Society with dogs and helping saving, dogs. That's powerful, right? And think of that power. And I just use Ryan as an example because we were talking last week, but you think of that power. If you can take that story and relate it to what you're looking to help a client with, like, I think that's when gold really strikes. So
Oh,
thank you. I'm not
absolutely.
sure who this Facebook user is. We'll have to go on Facebook. Your brother
Yeah.
is flying very high. Sorry to hear about that, Dan. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And yeah,
And I was gonna second that. Whoever said that, yes, I agree. So here, and I don't want to go in this rabbit hole, but I'm gonna go in and out real quick. Uh, so he is definitely in heaven, because
oh,
listen,
100%.
because listen,
100%.
here's the truth for everybody who bashes and throws these comments about. If you believe in the God that forgives all, then there's nothing you can do that's wrong that's going to keep you there, as long as you do the right in the future and just learn from the bad mistakes you made. That's it.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Well, and you want to talk about a powerful story and a powerful lens. Religion is probably the most powerful. And I'm not
Oh,
getting into it because that's a totally
yeah,
other
yeah,
topic
yeah,
and we're done
yeah,
here.
yeah,
But
exactly.
religion is a story that you happen to believe,
Mhm.
and everyone happens to believe a similar story, different story. And as
Their
I got
versions,
deeper
their
into,
versions. Yeah,
everyone's got a version, 100%. And you know what? To each his own. That's what makes all of us unique, right?
absolutely.
I believe snowmobiling is the best sport on the planet. I believe Skidoo are the best made snowmobiles on the planet. I bleed yellow. If I weren't to bleed yellow, I'd probably bleed Polaris, which I guess would be blue. But I'll speak to somebody else, not two doors down from me, who
Yeah,
bleeds green, who bleeds Arctic Cat.
absolutely.
It's their story. Is
Yes.
are any of them really? I mean, listen, you
Right
got
or wrong? Is
Yamaha,
any?
which makes all the four stroke, and they're big on four stroke. But right or wrong, it's the lens in which we see things, and
It's our. In the end, it's our opinion, and we're all going to
one hundred
have
percent.
opinions on all of it.
100%. And
Yeah.
and I guess in the end, and I know we're going way long today, and I
Oh
apologize,
yeah.
everyone, but I guess in the end, it's just this: like, think of when you're going into any situation, especially in sales, where you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds to get somebody's attention. Just think of the stories they might have told themselves, right? And just try and address them. You might have thought this, you might have thought that, you might have thought this, you might have thought that. Can I share with you a quick story that's going to give you an insight? And a bigger thing is the think of it, it's kind of like bridge, where if you're telling a story and it's getting too technical, you can say something like it's kind of like, right? So it's kind of like, X, Y, and Z to keep it on a real plain level. But I'm done. We're golden.
No, that was good.
That's
That was
it.
good.
Thanks,
But
everybody. Thanks for being
yeah,
here.
I'll end everybody with this. People hear
Yeah.
statistics, but they feel stories. Brent Dykes.
Mm, that's
They hear
good.
statistics, they feel stories. Tell your stories, guys. Don't be afraid to tell
Yeah.
your stories.
Have a great week, everybody. And next week, DJ and I have a huge surprise for y'all. So we're going to leave it at that.